Mhairi. Right, I think we'll get going. Good evening, everyone. I'm Deirdre Brock. I am the MP for Edinburgh North and Leith, this constituency that you are in. I'd like to welcome you all here today. I am going to be chairing today's event, and this is the latest leg in the Independence Roadshow that Mhairi and Ian have been taking around Scotland. They've been Paisley, Portree, other places as well, and they're heading to the northeast after this, I think. But it's been incredibly successful, pretty much booked out everywhere they've been. Tonight's, as you can see, a very full house too. And I need to, before I go any further actually, tell you about housekeeping, of course. We have 2 exits either side of the door, so basically you'll be going out the same way as you came in. We are not expecting a fire alarm, so if you hear anything, please just move quietly towards those exits. There are bathrooms, they are downstairs, but there is a lift if you require that to get down there. Now, it's my job to introduce, of course, 2 speakers who hardly need introducing to most of you, but I'll do my best. I am certain that aspects of the turbulent times that we are currently going through will be touched on by our speakers. Something I know that people in this Edinburgh North and Leith constituency are particularly exercised by. The Westminster petition to stop the proroguing of Parliament has the highest number of signatures of any constituency in Scotland and is in the top 10 of the 650 UK constituencies as well. And the Revoke Article 50 petition has been signed by just a whisker short of 25% of the electorate of this constituency. Again, is also in the top 10 of all constituencies in the UK. I am absolutely blessed to have such active and very much engaged constituents. Now, getting to our speakers, a little bit of crackling going on here. I should say, we are going to allow Ian and Mhairi to speak for around about 10 minutes, Ian Blackford. Yeah, around about. I'll be going, and then we'll have some time for questions from the audience. You can tell he's done this before, so some time for questions. And then some time afterwards for catching up with Mhairi and Ian. And I believe the occasional selfie is usual in these circumstances as well. And when we do have to clear out of here by 9:30, so we are going to be sort of wrapping things up around about 9 o'clock, okay? Now, Ian Blackford.
Hey, this is not going to work, is it? Right, I'll just put it in my hand. Deirdre, thanks for the kind introduction.
I was going to give you more of a... but you know, on you go.
Oh, let's get on with it, for God's sake.
He's the Westminster Group Leader, and his constituency is Roscoe and Lochaber, and he was actually born in Edinburgh.
Yes.
So this is a homecoming for him as well.
It is a homecoming.
Okay, on you go.
It's my spiritual home. My spiritual home is actually Easter Road, just Deirdre, you're not telling me you've let some jambos in. That wasn't supposed to happen. No, it's great to be back in Edinburgh in this wonderful church. This is where I was born and brought up, although I have to say that the beautiful Isle of Skye is my home. And one of the things I'm proud about of Skye is that when we had the referendum in 2014, Skye voted yes. 56% of the population of Skye and Lochaber voted less, and I make you this promise: when we have the referendum, I know yes, it's coming, we'll get a damn sight more than 56% next time round. We'll win this, and we'll win it convincingly. You know, maybe let's take 2014 as our starting point. Gordon Brown, my goodness, he's been in the press again, doesn't seem to learn, because Gordon Brown and his cohorts told us that we were going to get home rule in the spirit of Keir Hardie. We're going to get close to federalism in the United Kingdom. We were promised by all sorts of politicians that we were going to be a partner in the Union of the United Kingdom, that Scotland was going to lead the United Kingdom. And I'll tell you what's happened since then, what Mhairi, Deirdre and myself have witnessed, is the fact that, let's make it really simple, we're actually not welcome in that place they call Westminster. And I think those of you that have watched the debates, have watched Prime Minister's questions, a number of us have been told to get back home, sometimes to get back to the Isle of Skye, sometimes it's been actually even more brutal than that. And even actually a Tory MP that called out in a debate on Scotland's future that one of us should commit suicide. And you know, you can't tell the truth about Boris Johnson. You can't say, apparently, that Boris Johnson is a racist and Boris Johnson is a liar. But it's perfectly permissible in the way that Westminster works for a Tory MP to say that a Scottish MP should commit suicide. I mean, this is actually, it's quite serious when you consider the problem that we have, in particular with male suicide, because that's the kind of behaviour that we've had to put up with and the disrespect that's been shown. But when you look at the politics of things, the first thing that happened was that we had English votes for English laws. Now, it's perfectly right for those that believe in the Union to be able to defend that position and argue for it. But if you believe in the Union, then you have to believe in equality. And for the first time in parliamentary history, Scottish MPs are second-class citizens in the UK Parliament. That's what they created. And they've engineered a situation that the Speaker has to determine what is English and what is Welsh business. And we have the ridiculous situation that Scottish MPs' voices, Scottish MPs' votes are discounted. That's equality. That's fairness in the union that we have today. But I think the worst thing that we've seen over the course of the last few years is what happened when they brought in the Withdrawal Act and the contempt that was shown for our nation. Nothing to do with whether or not you support the Scottish National Party, whether you support independence for Scotland, because what we had was a barefaced attack on devolution in Scotland. Because when the Scotland Act came in, and when we were all asked to vote in a referendum as to whether or not we wanted to have a parliament in Edinburgh, that in that Scotland Act, they defined what were reserved powers and what was to be devolved. And the reserved powers were specifically listed in that document. But what has happened through the Withdrawal Act is that powers that the people of Scotland voted for, not the powers of the SNP, but the powers that we all collectively have, were taken back by Westminster. Powers over agriculture, powers over fishing, powers over the environment. And they didn't understand when we stood up in debate after debate and said, you cannot do this, it's legislated that these powers sit in the Scottish Parliament. And they were protected under something called the Sewell Convention that forbids Westminster in interfering in the powers of the Scottish Parliament. But you know, there is a line that links through to what's happening with prorogation today. Because Westminster simply said that Sewell doesn't apply. Why? Because these are not normal times. Now please just dwell on that. Because at any time, Boris Johnson or anyone else can turn round and say these are not normal times and we're interfering with the powers of the Scottish Parliament. And I say this to you, that when a Prime Minister has the arrogance and the contempt, and yes, behaves like a tin pot dictator, to the extent that he can shut down Parliament, who is to say that Westminster can't shut down the Scottish Parliament? Because that's the reality. That is the way that Westminster behaves if they believe it's in their interests. But just to return to this issue in the power grab in the Scottish Parliament, what we had on a Tuesday evening was that Westminster rushed through that power grab in a debate that lasted 15 minutes. 15 minutes, and the powers that you voted for were stripped from Scotland. And no Scottish MP was given the opportunity to speak in that debate. And that's what led to the situation the following day where I got flung out and Deirdre and Mhairi, glad to say. And by the way, they didn't know what was happening. That was entirely spontaneous that they decided that they were taking a bit of time off from Parliament as well. But look, that was really important that we stood up and said, no, we're not standing for this. You know, I will tell you a wee story about that as well, because on that Tuesday evening, late on, I had 3 conversations. I had one with Mike Russell, one with the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, and one with my wife. And and Mike, who's a kind of fairly calm individual, great colleague, was ready to man the barricades. Nicola said, "You've got to do something." The conversation I had with my wife, that was actually much more straightforward. See if you didn't do something. Don't come home. I'll tell you because she knows the story and it's true. But you know, look, joking apart, we have been part of this union with England since 1707. Look at the chaos. Look at the fact that there isn't a government. And just think about, and I know I'm probably close to 10 minutes, give me another 2. But if you just think about what's changed in Edinburgh, what's changed in Scotland over the last 20 years, our wonderful Parliament that's had to come of age. Look at the things that we've done. Look at the fact that we have protected education as a right, not based on our ability to pay. Look at what we've done in free personal care. Look at what we have done in climate change. I'll tell you, we've got a government in Edinburgh to be proud of. The message to the people of Scotland: do you want this chaos? Do you want this inward-looking United Kingdom? Or are you going to take us by the hand? And are you going to recognise that we have a responsibility to finish that journey that we started when that Parliament, that Winnie Ewing famously said, the Scottish Parliament that was adjourned in 1707 is now reconvened. Now is the time for us to become normal, because that's what it's about. In retaining our destiny, regaining our destiny as an independent member of the European Union, creating Scotland as a destination within Europe, one where there is that focus on delivering sustainable economic growth, but yes, delivering fairness, dealing with the inequality that we've inherited from Westminster, taking our responsibilities for climate change. But this is now more urgent, because we have got a bunch of fanatics, because that's what they are, in government in Westminster that want to drive us off a cliff. And it's not scaremongering to say that a no-deal Brexit runs the risk of putting 100,000 Scots on the dole. As a matter of ideology, making us poorer. And when you think that the Treasury has told us that a no-deal Brexit runs the risk of us losing 10% of our GDP potential, an impact on our economy 4 times greater than the financial crisis of 2008, a financial crisis that we've barely recovered from. This is simply ideology, which is driving the right-wing Brexiteers that have taken over the Tory party, sending us over the cliff edge. And the task we've got next week is to work with other colleagues in Parliament to stop that no deal. Because I don't want somebody in Bolton losing their job just as much as I don't want somebody losing their job in Buckie. And I know people in Scotland say, why are the SNP spending so much time in trying to save the UK? Because it's not in anybody's interests for the UK to crash out of Europe. But I say this to everybody in Scotland, but perhaps we say it to people in Westminster. The people of Scotland are sovereign. That is the established position that has been demonstrated over the course of the last few decades. There is the famous quote from the court case, McCormick versus the Crown, that parliamentary sovereignty is a purely English concept that has no counterpart in Scottish constitutional history. My great friend, our great friend Jim Sivers, said in 2014 on the 18th of September that we held sovereignty in our hands in the hours that the polling stations were open. There's the one thing I would disagree with Jim, because sovereignty is ours today, tomorrow and always. It is our right. It is your right to determine our future. And when the people of Scotland voted in the election in 2016, we returned an SNP government with a mandate to deliver an independence referendum on a change of circumstances. Boris or anybody else has no right to deny the people of Scotland that choice to determine our own future. That will happen. Scotland will become an independent country in the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now very quickly introduce our next speaker, and of course Mhairi Black, who's MP for Paisley in South Renfrewshire, youngest member of our Parliament, youngest in the Parliament, I think, since 1832. But what she lacks in actual years on this planet, she more than makes up for with a maturity I only wish I saw mirrored in many of those occupying the benches opposite us in the Commons chamber. She is a young woman who has dealt extraordinarily well with the enormous pressure and attention she's received since her election. But what you see with Mhairi is absolutely what you get. And like Ian, it's been a great privilege to get to know and to work with her too. So Mhairi Black, everyone.
Just follow me, because he is, he's brilliant at a walkout. But I'm buttering him up with a joke because I'm just about to disagree with him. Oh no! So Ian says there that the people of Scotland are sovereign and always will be sovereign. Well, I would actually change that a little bit. I would say the people of Scotland should be sovereign and should always be sovereign. But to go back to the quote that our good friend Jim said, and I've yet to hear anyone put it any better, where he said we hold the power for that one day on the 18th of September, between the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 p.m, we get to decide for once ourselves, with nobody else having their say, just us, whether we wanted to keep that power or hand it back. And at 1 minute past 10, we chose to hand it back. Now, that's an unfortunate reality. I don't like it. Ian doesn't like it. I don't want to be in Westminster. We're seeing firsthand how poisonous this establishment is. We did hand back power to those people. And our issues with Westminster, where yes, it's easy to look at us and go, they're just grievance politicians, these nationalists, and that's always used as a word to just ignore them. They've got nothing of value to say. We know what they're about, let's not listen. That's a tactic by unionists and British nationalists. Because the reality is that our problems with Westminster don't come from emotion. They don't come from a sense of grievance. They come from the fact that it is unjust, the things that Scotland has been put through and will be put through. And the reality is that this place does not give a damn what happens in Scotland. We are an afterthought to them. And that's what I want to explain a wee bit more of. Because my disdain at Westminster isn't some childish thing going, I just don't like them, they're the opposition. It's because that Parliament isn't a functioning Parliament. And it has managed to convince not just itself, but quite often the rest of the world, that it is the mother of all parliaments, because it is grand, it has gold, it has history, it has tradition, and that's something that we must always value. Well, yes, it is, but I'd rather get work done. And when you look at Westminster, it doesn't have a rule book. Truly, it does not have rules. What we have is one book called Erskine May, and it was written, I think it was in the 1600s actually, was the original. And what happens is the speaker goes away and flicks through Erskine May, and it's his interpretation of whatever that book says. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever read Erskine May, or you could convince anybody at anything, right? You can weasel your way through that book, no bother whatsoever. And that's what we have. It is up to the discretion of the speaker, and we've already seen that from both sides, whether it's Brexiteers saying that speaker's biased, or whether it's us sitting in the chamber going, you've not called any of us, and this is about Scotland. But it comes down to the discretion of one person. Is that a tradition that we want to keep going? Is that the kind of Parliament that we expect? Well, no, it's not. And in 2014, we get this close to being able to change that. Now, whether I like it or not, I understand that people were swayed by evil max to the max of the maxiest. We would become the strongest evolved Parliament in the world. If I hear one more Labour politician promise as close to federalism as possible, home rule, honestly, it is like a record just on repeat. I think Gordon Brown actually winds up at the back. And I tell you, in the 4 years that I've been doing this now, this is the first time when I've got the anger back. Really got the anger back, because there's an element where you get desensitised because you're arguing with these clowns every day, and then you have to queue up for your lunch beside them, right? So you have to get used to it to stay sane. But not anymore. We've got a Prime Minister who nobody voted for, shutting down Parliament because he doesn't like what the democratically elected members have to say to him. Now, I don't know what to call that other than fascist. Now, people say that might be an exaggeration. I say it's fascist. Because the thing about Boris in particular, and the thing about politics right now is we are now being dragged down the same route as America. And if you look at America and you see these problems have been brewing for decades. And what I think is happening in America is, unfortunately, a mirror is being held up, and it's got the face of Donald Trump on it. And I think a lot of Americans are now going, whoa, this has gone too far. And we're starting to see people waking up and going, do you know what? We need to pay attention to politics. This actually does affect our lives. This guy's building a wall. Hold on, he's tearing families apart. He's putting kids in cages. Oh, we need to do something about this. Well, see, that Donald Trump and his best pal Steve Bannon, guess who they hang about with? Nigel Farage, Dominic Cummings, who is now the advisor to our Prime Minister. He's a man who was actually held in contempt of the very Parliament that he's now advising control of, because he wouldn't turn up to answer questions, because he get found out that he broke the law in order to win a referendum. And it reminds me of a quote that I read at school, but it's stuck with me all the time, where it says, fascism doesn't turn up shouting with an armband on and leather boots to kick in your door. It comes creeping in, drip by drip by drip. And if you said to me in 2014, in fact, I did go and say to people in 2014, can you imagine if one day Boris Johnson's in charge? What can we do about it? I didn't think it was actually going to happen. Yet here we are. And he's going to have an election where very easily Nigel Farage could stand. Oh, is that not a wee coalition right there? It could deliver. So what I find myself having to do is I want to remind people that yes, politicians have lied to us, yes, we have been misled, but ultimately we are responsible for how we vote. We are responsible for our democracy. And that has to hit people and really enter their minds to realise what's at stake here, because politics is your wages, politics is the price of food, politics is the opportunities that you will have. And we're already seeing these opportunities being taken, whether it be freedom of movement, whether it be decent workers' rights, whether it be trade unions. They're all going. And the reality for Scotland is that we have 59 MPs. The City of London has 73. One city can outvote the second largest country in this union of equals. And they do. We turn up to Westminster every week and we go through those lobbies and we waste our own time and everybody else's time, because we know all it takes is half a London MPs to turn up and it doesn't matter. Even if every single one of our MPs was SNP, would not matter a job. And remember that we were promised that, okay, we accept that we have to change things, we'll have the Seoul Convention, we'll give more devolved powers. The opposite happened. The opposite happened, but people have switched off because it's easier to switch off. Look where that's got us. So if there's one message that I would give to people is, this isn't having the, I suppose, what's the word, the joy or the pleasure of having the option of independence. We need independence. If you want your life to stay in any shape or form the same way as it has been, we need to get our act together. And we need to realise we are good enough, we are wealthy enough, we are strong enough, and by God, we are clever enough to be our own country. Because if I was to turn it on its head, and I was to say to you, imagine Scotland was already independent, like all the other countries who have left British rule. If Scotland was independent and you were being asked, do you want to join this union? What's the selling point? There truly isn't one. And that is why we are seeing the kind of visceral attacks on the SNP in Parliament and in the media. They are nationalists, they have nothing to say, they're grievance. It is because there is no positive case for this union, which begs the question, if we are a drain, if we do have to rely on Big Brother England beside us, why the hell do the Tories want to keep us? Judging by the reaction, we've got a few of the converted in tonight. But what we're doing these events for is to give people the chance to ask those questions. Because I understand that it is a big deal, especially if you've not been, living and breathing politics like we do day in, day out. Sometimes you do just have to ask simple questions to reassure yourself. That's what we're here to do, because I guarantee you, independence is not as scary as what's coming down the road if we stay in this union.
All right, thanks very much, Mhairi and Ian. We'll now have some questions. I think we'll probably take 2 or 3 at a time, because I'm guessing there'll be a few. And there'll be someone going around with this mic. Or if you can use this one, Tanya? You've turned yours off. All right. Okay, so Tanya's going to be going in, and if people can put their questions up. So that gentleman and the woman behind you.
If the UK government refuses a Section 30 order, what can we do?
Sorry, mine comes with a wee bit of a story. I work at a place where a lot of people are very pro-independence, pro-European Union, and one of the things that a colleague who I thought beyond belief would always be pro-independence said to me, I just didn't know if I can go through another 3-4 years of bother if independence did go through in terms of referendum. And I am beginning to wonder, is that something that you're going to strategise for, and kind of, because there are potentially people who, have already gone through 3 years of uncertainty and they don't want to go through the same thing again, which is a scary thought for me because I am obviously very, very pro-independence.
Okay, so Ian will just focus on that one, and then
Yeah, we'll take them.
take them both, yeah?
But I'm going to start with the second one, then I'll come on to the Section 30 thing. And, they're both good questions. I absolutely get what your friend is saying, because politics in Britain are broken. They're absolutely broken, and it's an embarrassment to each and every one of us. There's been absolute failure of leadership over the course of the last few years. But cast your mind back to the referendum in 2014. We had a 650-page white paper, and we had a long running period to that campaign. And I think all of us can remember the joy of the interaction that we had with the public in that debate. And the thing that sticks with me is that we had a Yes shop in Portree, for those that know the place, in Wentworth Street, just round the corner from the high school. And the most uplifting thing was the engagement of young people that would come and had a thirst for knowledge and had a real burning desire to create a better Scotland. It was a fantastic period. And contrast that with what happened in the Brexit referendum. All the talk from Nigel Farage and his cronies about the fears of immigration and what was going to happen with Turkey, and that whole toxic environment has then spilled over to everything that's happened since then. And let's not forget Theresa May and her hostile environment and everything else. And I can tell you that the three of us that are sitting here, day in, day out, week in, week out, our hearts are torn apart from people that come to see us, people that have rights to live and stay in this country, that the Tories want to kick out. I'll give you an example. A woman came to see me last week. Her son lives down in Ayrshire, married to an American woman. They're apart because he doesn't earn enough money for his wife to have the right to stay here. Just dwell on that what the Tories do to our people and how they insult our approach of being an open country. Now, the reason I explain that story to you is because when we have this discussion on Scotland's future as an independent country, and the one thing I want to say to everybody here and everybody in the wider movement is it's never going to be about how people voted in 2014 and 2016, because the debate we're going to have is about what kind of country you want to live in. How do we create that wealthier Scotland? How do we make sure in developing a green industrial base that we accept our responsibilities for climate? And how do we end the poverty that so many of our people suffer from? And we have the answers to these challenges. And we need to inspire people that we can find a way out of the system that we've inherited from the United Kingdom. Mhairi and I have spoken in countless debates on social security, and we talk about social security. And we use the phrase that society is only as strong as its weakest link. They talk about welfare. They talk about punishing people. And I had a woman that came to a surgery today in Glencoe, and we were looking at the statistics for the food bank in Fort William. The number of people going to that food bank in Fort William have doubled in 3 years. And the things that we experience day in, day out, and we have to say to the people of Scotland, what kind of country do you want to live in? That this is a wealthy country, but it's becoming increasingly unequal. And we need to inspire people to engage in that debate and have the confidence to know that when we have powers over welfare, when we can do the right thing in social security, when we have powers over our economy, that we will create that fairer society. But the difference with the Brexiteers is we'll have a plan. Now, part of the reason for the difficulty over Brexit is because of the red lines that the Tory party have had. And look, cast your mind back to the Lancaster House speech, which was one of the most hilarious things I think I ever heard. Theresa May said that she wanted to have a free trade agreement with Europe. Well, what's there not to like about that? The bit you didn't get, Theresa, was it's called the single market and the customs union. And you couldn't get anything better than that. Now, I know that's a kind of longish answer to your question, but it's about creating that climate. And it's about having that debate. And I don't care whether folk have voted for the SNP or anybody else. And that's why it's important when we have the Citizens' Assembly and someone like David Martin is going to be the co-chair. Because whether folk were with us in 2014 or not, now is the time to think about where we're going. And do you want to be in the vision of that society that Mhairi outlined with what the Tories are doing? God help us. Because we know we can make a difference. We know that we can take our responsibilities. But look at the alternative. And, you know, there's a question for Jeremy and for John McDonnell and for Seamus Milne, his advisor, and I've said to them, you've got to decide what side you're on. Because you made a mistake in 2014, and you've paid a price for that. Because you're on the wrong side, and you've made sure that it's a Tory government that is inflicting damage to the people of Scotland. Now, look, you know, people often talk about, and I won't wrap up. But one thing which is important, because often, you know, people talk about the GERS figures and can we afford to be independent in this context and all the rest of it. Look at the deficit. We didn't create the deficit. The deficit's created by Westminster. And when you think of everything that's happened with austerity, they tell us that we can't afford to invest in our public services, we can't give people a decent pay rise. But the fact of the matter is, on the back of bailing out the banks, which we had to do, Gordon Brown, followed by the Tories, started on a programme of quantitative easing. Let's just call it, make it simple, printed money. Your money. £435 billion of it. We now owe that to ourselves. And what's happened? That money's gone into the financial system. It's driven up asset prices. We've bailed out those that created the financial crisis, and we stuffed cash in their pockets. At the same time, folk in tax credits, folk that if they had money in their pocket they were spending, got told that they had to pay a price. That austerity was a political choice. And that's why it's so important that we make a difference, that we create the circumstances that we deliver that welfare and fairer society. And that's why we've got to have that debate with your friend and say, yeah, we will find a way and we will have a plan and we will deliver independence in a timely manner. Look, section 30. What I'd simply say to people is, what's happening now is, all right. What I'd simply say is, look at the polls. Look at the Ashcroft poll from the other week. Because you're seeing public opinion in Scotland changing. I had a conversation this morning with a woman in Ballahoola. She was no in 2014. She can't wait for a referendum. She's voting yes next time. And we're all having conversations like that. The important point is that we're having conversations with people, we're listening to people, and people make that journey from no to yes. And we're not talking about getting to 51 and 52%. We're talking about Scotland recognising that as our destiny. There is no way that Boris Johnson or anyone else can continue to say no. Now, I've brought a couple of things with me. This was our election leaflet for the European elections. Scotland for Europe, let's say it loud and clear, and it talks about Scotland as an independent country. Ruth Davidson, remember her? Make Nicola Sturgeon listen. Your vote for my Scottish Conservative and Unionist team will tell Nicola Sturgeon no more referendums. Well, how did that go? I don't know if you can see this at the back, but here is the map of how Scotland voted. SNP 38%, the Tories 11%. We won every local authority except Orkney and Shetland. There's the message to Boris Johnson. Boris, if you're watching, the Scottish Parliament gets back to work next week and it's not going to be prorogued. And the Scottish Parliament is going to finish the legislative work in the referendum. We'll be having our Section 30.
Can you speak up a wee bit?
Oh no, there we go. Is that what you're doing? Right. Don't dare. No, so of course we have been coming up with the plans for what we can do the day after a yes vote. We've been looking into what our pension system can look like. We've got models for our social security system. I would go into more detail, but as Ian said, Boris might be watching. So yes, of course we've been doing that work for the last 4 years. But the key point to make is you say uncertainty. And that's a human thing to go, if this is going to be an absolute gamble, then no, I'm not gambling the little that I've got, no chance. But then I would point out the uncertainty hasn't been caused by us. At no point has the Scottish Government created uncertainty. We had our referendum by the book. We lost that referendum. We didn't throw a huff. We said, right, well, we're going to make sure we can come down to Westminster and hold you guys to account. So we did. We went down, and lo and behold, we didn't get a single thing that we were promised. And yet, now they're the ones who say that we don't respect referendums. How about respecting the promises you made to win that referendum? And then, after that, fast forward a couple of months, we have the Brexit referendum. Scotland didn't vote to leave. And again, did the Scottish Government have a hissy fit? Did they say we're not playing, it's our ball? No, they didn't. They said, right, okay, we accept we're still part of this United Kingdom. Here's a compromise paper for what we think we could still work with. They didn't even read it. They didn't highlight a single point in that paper. What more are we to do? Because we only have the power that they give us, and we have done everything we can to be respectful, to be compromising, to try and actually represent the views of the people of Scotland, and accepting that they still want to give this union one last bash. So, right, here's what will work for it. It's them who refuse to move forward. It is them who refuses to compromise, and it is them who create constant uncertainty. And if you look back right the way to the 70s, when we first discovered the oil, it was them that mismanaged it. It was them who made sure that the people in London get richer, meanwhile the folk who were living a mile away from the stuff were getting poorer. It was them who've been doing it, and they've been doing it for 40 odd years. So my question, I suppose, to a lot of people in Scotland is, should we really be surprised that they're behaving in this manner? It's just that for us, we've had it ingrained into us that that's normal politics. See, if you look to the rest of the world, no, it's not. No, it is not. What independent country has ever asked to be ruled by somebody else again? What country's done it? And yet here we are in this situation. The only reason we have uncertainty is because we're not in control. We are subject to whatever those 73 MPs in London or wherever else decide to vote for. That's the reality of what it means to be in this union. So the second question about the Section 30 order, and I'm aware that people might not like this answer, but it's my honest one, is that Yes, Westminster's going to keep saying no to a Section 30 order, but if you look throughout history at any kind of movement, the only way that you progress society is either by constitutional and legal means, changing laws and things, or the second one, which is more often than not the case, it's political will, it's public will. And there's no formula to it, because if there was, my God, we'd want it. There's no formula to it. A lot of it's to do with different things happening at different times, but most of all it's to do with when people decide enough's enough. This is wrong. And that is when you start a wee spark that builds and builds to the point where the folk in power, they can't keep ignoring you, because guess what? They're outnumbered. And that's what we have to get to a position. Because, as I said, whether we like it or not, the constitutional and legal position of Scotland is that we ask for a Section 30 order, they say no. Well, you got your answer, didn't you? Because you gave away the power to have referendum. On the 18th of September, you said, no, we don't want anything. And that's where, tucked away in the Scotland Act, Section 28, subsection 7, there is a quote that says, "Nothing in this Parliament affects the ability of the United Kingdom to legislate laws for Scotland." So even though we have all these devolved powers, even though we have all these lovely things gifted to us by Gordon Brown, we have no real power, because that one subsection says nothing contained in this Act ultimately prevents Westminster legislating for Scotland. Nobody believed Boris would try and suspend Parliament. Nobody believes that Boris would try and shut down a Scottish Parliament. We're past the point of guessing. I'm fed up guessing. I want to know that we've got the power over our own future. And the only way we can do that, if it's not with a Section 30 order, is to educate people enough so that they want a Section 30 order. Because I don't want to end up like Catalonia. And for all that I have the utmost respect and solidarity with them, is Catalonia independent? Does the world recognise Catalonia as independent? We do things by the book, and we do them right, and we earn the votes of people, and we are going to earn the votes of people in the next referendum. Whenever it comes, however it comes, we will do it, and we'll do it when we can convince people that we are not better together, better than this.
We saw the proposal last week about raising the pension age to 75, and we know that most areas in Scotland, the life expectancy is well below 75. My personal experience, my dad died at 63, he never reached his pension age. Would an independent Scotland, do you think the SNP would keep the state pension age at its current level?
Do you want to let the gentleman or question?
Hi, I'm sorry to bring the question back again, but I don't think it was answered. I took the question, it was the first question there to be, what do we do if we're refused a Section 30? Now, I'm going to say that the answer seemed, almost like listening to Boris Johnson with the Irish backstop. If we keep saying, no, it's going to be removed, it'll happen. Well, it's not going to happen. As long as Boris Johnson's Prime Minister, he is certainly going to deny it. And lo and behold, today in Scotland, we've got Jeremy Corbyn, who was making positive statements a couple of weeks ago, now saying that it wouldn't be a priority for a Labour government, and therefore it's down the road. And to my mind, it's not good enough to say. We're watching people coming over, and both speakers have outlined, from no to yes. We're seeing it on a weekly basis where we campaign. And it's not good enough to keep saying, you know, if there's a will there. Well, I can tell you, where I campaign, there is a massive will. And particularly given the events in the last 48 hours, there is a massive will. So there needs to be an option. There needs to be an option. Because we need to be saying, if you keep saying no, and I can't think of any other state that's become independent, by the way, that done it through the gold star referendum. So we need an alternative, and it's disappointing it's not even going to be discussed at Congress.
Okay, thank you very much.
Right, so the first question about pensions, that's, again, rewind to 2014. What were we promised? Your pensions are only going to be safe with Westminster. And lo and behold, we've got the WASPy issue. I tell you, I've got a nation of aunties now. So we've got WASPy women. We've got them threatening to take away the triple lock for pensions. We have the lowest pension in Europe, and yet we're told that we should somehow be grateful for that. And then, of course, as was mentioned, we hear Ian Duncan Smith come out, you know, the compassionate conservative that he is, comes out and says, and I remember when I first got elected and I got an invitation from the Centre of Social Justice, and I thought, oh, what's that? The Right Honourable Ian Duncan Smith invites you to, whoa, his name besides social justice, hold on a wee minute. He comes out and says, no, you're actually going to work till you're 75. Now, I have tried to put this in a polite way, but I can't. They're hoping that you'll die before you get your pension. Simple as that. When we first got elected, we went along because this guy, John Crindland, was doing a review for the government about pensionable age. And myself and Ian went along to meet him, and we said, look, exactly what was said, that people aren't living long enough to even claim their pension anywhere near where you're saying. And apart from anything else, the kind of employment that the government's telling them to go into, it's physically not suitable. So you have to think about this. And he did not consider it at all. There was no mention of it whatsoever. We pointed out that Scotland has pockets where we have low life expectancy. So how can someone there be treated exactly the same as someone affluent in London? We have to consider all of these factors, and what we want the UK government to do, and what we have been doing in the background, is we want there to be an independent pension commission that has nothing to do with politics. Because the problem with pensions is that you get a government coming forward, or a political party coming forward and saying, right, here's what we'll do, we'll wave the magic wand here and we'll make all these sweeping changes, and it sounds magic, doesn't it? And they get in and they make all those sweeping changes. They don't consider what the knock-on effect's going to be. Pensions aren't a thing that you can write laws for and see the results of in one parliamentary term. It doesn't work like that. You don't start seeing the knock-on effects until 20, 30 years down the line. What we're seeing with WASPy right now is just a minute example of that, of going, this is what happens because pensions are constantly changing, and they're used as a political toy, when in actual fact it's supposed to be the one thing that everybody knows, I'll be okay eventually because I've got this, I've worked all my days for this, well-earned rest apart from anything else. So the idea that pensions are safe with the union is non-existent, whereas if we're independent, it means that we can come up with the rules ourselves, and we can take into consideration, well, hold on, if you have been in a certain occupation that's been physically demanding, you're not going to be able to keep doing that until you're 68 or 65. So what's our options going to be? And that's where I think there is a world of opportunity. I don't see anybody voting for an independent Scottish government that's going to put up the pension age. Put it that way. And the difference is that see if a government does decide to do that, the next election, you can vote them out. You can actually vote them out without just being a protest vote. in the UK where you're going to need to deal with it anyway. So my short answer is no, we're not going to put it up to 75. Cannot see that happening, and the plans that we have in the background are a damn sight better than what the UK has been doing. To turn again to the Section 30 question, I understand the frustration, and I understand the fact that people are literally dying because of this Conservative government, and they have been for a long time now. I completely understand that, but I have to accept the reality of where we are. And right now, Scotland is a respected nation with the rest of the world, and we have been working and building on that reputation, not just within Europe, but internationally. And that has started, we have been making inroads here. So the reality is that if Scotland turns around tomorrow and goes, right, we're going to organise our own referendum, I guarantee you all the unionist parties will go to their supporters and they'll say, boycott it, boycott it. So then we have a referendum and it's got 99% votes yes. Nobody's going to recognise that because half the country didn't vote on it. And that is where, whether we like it or not, this is the ballpark we're in. And if we want independence and we want it to last, which I do, I'm only fighting this battle once more, then I'm off ski. We have to fight this on the ground where we are right now, and right now, legally, constitutionally, we are beholden to this union. And just because we don't respect the union, the majority of the Scottish voters do still respect it. And that's what they told us in 2014. Now, see when that changes, that's where we do have a democratic mandate which exists within this union as it stands, that in the last Scottish election, should there be a significant change in circumstances, for example, Brexit, but even without Brexit, if there is substantial change, we can push for that if we want. My question is, why is the whole of Scotland not marching outside demanding a Section 30? Because we've been very vocal every other time. I've seen the photos of Thatcher's days. I remember the Iraq War. Everybody was out in the streets. Why is that not happening now? And it's not happening now because somewhere in the Scottish psyche we accept, maybe we're not good enough, maybe we aren't big enough, right? I don't know, I feel uncertain. We have the confidence, people in this room have the confidence in Scotland and themselves. That confidence becomes infectious. And that's where we start changing things. Because when we do have the people who are voting no and the people who are scared and are feeling uncertain, when we have them going, do you know what, we are better than this, we can do something different, I'm going to march for this. That's when we're at a point where we can really go for it. Right now, the honest answer is we're not there. And that is just me giving my honest answer, which is why we are doing these meetings. We are going right. I don't want to be spending my nights in the week, going round town halls. I'd much rather be playing my PS4 right now. Not going to lie, I've got a new game, it's brilliant. But here we are, because we believe in it. We need to get other folk believing in it. And until we're there, the sad fact is, the rest of the world's not going to recognise it. In Scotland, we can be independent in our minds, but it doesn't matter a jot if the rest of the world doesn't see us as independent. So, apart from anything else, the last thing that we should be doing is where people are asking us, and quite rightly, it's fair to ask these questions and going, well, what do we do if that's not the case? I think we should be flipping that back round and going, no. Who the hell do these people think they are telling us that we can't have it? How are we holding them to account? The people who said that we were a union of equals, the people who promised as close to federalism as possible and home rule, where are the questions getting pointed at them? So I think that we just have to keep building and building and convincing, because we didn't get from 20% to 45% because of a great Yes campaign. If I'm very honest, my personal experience of the Yes campaign was that it was completely disorganised at headquarters, and the reason we got to 45 was because individual campaigners who've been doing it for years went, to hell with that, I'm getting a table and printing my own leaflets. And that happened all over the country. That's how we got to 45, because people recognised, oh God, they mean it. They're really giving up their time for this. I know it's hard to sustain. I know that people are tired. I'm tired. I am in a job that I ultimately do not want to be in. But we're doing it because we believe in something. Let's give other folks something to believe in as well. And that way, we will get the independence, not only that we can recognise, but that the rest of the world can recognise, and that Westminster cannot ignore.
Mhairi's right. You know, look, if we're honest with ourselves, we got the 45% vote in 2014, and all the polls until very recently showed us we were at 45%, maybe a wee bit up on that. The last few months has shown that that's started to shift. That, like the women that I had a conversation with this morning in Ballaghoolish, people are moving from no to yes. It's happening. There is momentum behind that. I know that there's lots of people in this hall have had to be very patient. We've had an SNP government for 12 years, and let's be brutally honest, we are not here to be a government of a devolved parliament. We are here to deliver independence. That's the raison d'etre of this movement. But it's only by demonstrating that we get on with the day job, that we can do the right thing for the people of Scotland, that will take these others with us. And I say to everybody here and everybody outside, we've got to have these conversations door by door, street by street, town by town, and we build that support up. And what I simply say, because people say, well, we need a plan B, can I just ask you, please, I'm asking you, give us the opportunity to show that plan A is going to work. Because I'm going to say to you, it will work. Now look, you can turn around and say, the First Minister, myself, Mhairi, anybody else, can't determine today when we're going to get the Section 30. Yeah, you're right. I'll tell you that the First Minister and myself, we want that Section 30 and we want it as soon as possible. But Mhairi talked about flipping it round. The whole point about that Tory campaign, say no to Nicola Sturgeon, it's not working. And when you look at what's happened with Jeremy Corbyn and all the rest of it, they recognise that the people of Scotland have got the right to make that call. And actually, I'll let you into a wee secret. See, when you speak to some of the Tories, they recognise this isn't attainable either. And they either accept in the short term that we've got that mandate, that we've got that popular support, and yes, we need to build upon that. Now let's just speculate for a wee second. Let's say we get to the next election, whether it's Westminster or whether it's in Holyrood, and the primacy of that mandate has to come from Holyrood. But let's just say that we're facing an election, and maybe we do over the course of the next few weeks, and we'll be saying to the people of Scotland, is it your right to choose, or is it Westminster? And if Boris Johnson or anyone else are going to continue to turn round and say no, the obligation that we've got is to send a very clear message to Westminster, you're not on. We need to sweep the boards, we need to make sure we remove every Tory, Labour and Liberal Democrat MP in Scotland that are holding our country back. Because at the end of the day, it's members of those parties that have gone through the lobbies against Scotland's interests over the course of the last few years. So let's build that support. Let's not have a target of getting back to 56. Let's have a target of getting back to 59, and we'll demonstrate to Westminster the will of the Scottish people will be listened to. Stick with us. We'll get that Section 30. We'll get the referendum. Scotland will become an independent country.
So back in the 2014 referendum, there was a focus from both, I would say, the national side and the unionist side on oil, and obviously with the climate emergency we've got now, we've got until 2030 to turn things around, or else it's not game over, but it's going to be pretty bad, right? So will another independence campaign focus more on other areas rather than oil in the light of climate change?
The First Minister, and I'm proud of her, has indicated this is a climate emergency. This is a climate emergency. And every single policy that we have has now got to be looked at on the basis that we accept our responsibilities. Now, we've had a tremendous bonus from North Sea oil over the course of the last few decades. The worst of it is we haven't seen the real benefits of that. £340 billion of tax receipts that's gone into the coffers of Westminster. And just for a second, contrast what's happened with Scotland and what's happened with Norway. And I'm not just talking about the oil fund. I'm talking about the importance that the Norwegian government has taken for its responsibilities in climate change. And I think it's something close to 60% of cars sold in Norway this year have been electric cars, because they've recognised that they have to make that transition. Now, we have 140,000 folk work in the oil industry, talented folk, and we need to make sure that we make that transition to green energy, but not just in green energy. We've got to make sure that we've got an industrial future. And when you start to think about things like gas, where you can make gas from waste, well, frankly, we should be doing that in Grangemouth. You think about the chemical industry. Think about plastics. 14% of the world's oil goes into the production of plastics. But the technology already exists to make plastics from waste. We need to be at the forefront of these things. So we're creating jobs. We're creating well-paid jobs. We're increasing our productivity in making sure that Scotland has a green future, but has an industrial future. But the fact of the matter is that when you look at renewable energy, it's Westminster that's held us back by removing the subsidies which are necessary to make sure that we have the benefit of the attractions that we have as a destination for renewable energy production. But let me say there's a flip side of that too, because we need to make sure that we've got the policies that allow us to take people out of fuel poverty. And it means that we need to make sure that we can insulate our houses. I live in the Highlands, as you probably know. 40% of people in the Highlands live in fuel poverty. And we have a situation under Westminster that because we live in a remote area, that we have a regional distribution market. And believe it or not, people in the Highlands pay 2 pence per kilowatt hour more than you pay in the Central Belt. When you live in the wettest, windiest part of the United Kingdom producing the energy, you pay the highest prices. So yes, we will deliver policies that take us to a clean industrial future, but we'll stop punishing our folk that are living in fuel poverty. Now I'm going to very, very briefly on WASPI and pensions, because Mhairi said a lot of it. But when you look at the way that the UK government has treated people, 3.8 million women born in the 1950s have had, in some cases, a 6-year increase in their pensionable age. Some of them got notice of just a year. And you had the ridiculous situation that the pensions minister, and we were both there, said the women could go on apprenticeship schemes. Just talk about pouring insult onto insult. But when you pay national insurance, you have a contract with the government, an expectation that you're going to get a pension. Yet the government said that this was a benefit. It's not a benefit, the women have paid for it. And when you look at the reality, we didn't know until we started looking at this, that there is actually a national insurance fund. Now it sits at a surplus. And it sits at a surplus of more than £20 billion. And Mhairi and I, with Tanya, who's up the back somewhere, we commissioned a report 3 years ago. And we demonstrated that the UK could reverse the 2011 Act that would slow down the increase in women's pensionable age. It would cost £8 billion. And they refused. They simply refused. Now we know that whether you're talking about that pensions issue, or whether you're talking about austerity, because it's all to do with austerity, we now know that the academic evidence exists that austerity is pushing people towards an early grave. It is a function of UK government policy. And you won't get, with an independent Scotland, fairness when it comes to pensions. I'm not going to, tonight, I'll get into a lot of trouble if I tell you what the exact plans are, but I'm going to give you just a wee example of the kind of thing we could do. When you look at pensions, the UK government gives up £41 billion through tax relief from pensions. But it predominantly goes to higher rate taxpayers. I'll give you a wee hint. There's just over 20 million active pension schemes in the UK. Can you imagine if that 40 billion was spent in a progressive way, what that would mean? Because on average it's worth £2,000 per pension. Now you think about someone earning 20,000 quid a year paying £2,000 into a pension, and you've probably got an idea of where we're going. So look, the idea that pensioners should be frightened with independence, independence is a salvation for pensioners now and pensioners tomorrow.
I think that was one of the biggest things on the last referendum that didn't come across. It was all about money. Every single thing, and at no point were you able to put across that we could afford any of these things, and everybody got frightened. I had people moaning about pensions. When you got farmers, it was about their money. When it was about oil, could we afford it? Every single time. You said you were dealing with pensions in the background. What you're doing it in the background. Everything's in the background. We should be out there talking all the time. We should be on the television all the time. I don't agree that we lost it because of what you were saying. I think the media had a big hand in what happened on that last week. And I worked with Mr. Pratt, so there's no way they were making road efforts then, I can assure you. But honestly, we need to be showing ourselves every single time. Why were the Liberals on the television all the time? I believe you've got more people, so you should be out there making a fuss every time. And there's no use planning for a yes vote, which I would love to have tomorrow, if we can't come back with the answers and have the answers ready this time. And we haven't got them ready.
Well, two things. I agree with you that this myth that the pensioners cost us the referendum, that I don't think that is true at all. I think it is people voted how they voted, and people had their own reasons, and that's it. But what the point you're making there, in fact, both with the media and in terms of we weren't at the forefront in 2014 saying how we could afford all these things. I agree with you. In 2014, I didn't particularly like the white paper. I thought this is so safe. This is just independence, but nothing will change. Well, no, I want independence because I want everything to change. That's the whole point, is that we get to create the vision for the future that we want. So I think that that's a lesson learned. We have to start going, no, what kind of country do we want to be? Here's where these powers are a necessity if we want any chance of achieving that. Now, in terms of the money, right, one of the first things I tried to find out when I went down to Westminster was how much money does Scotland pay in to Westminster compared to how much it gets back? Very simple question. Nobody will give a straight answer. Now I'm going to use a parallel here to explain what I mean. See the UK's tax system, our tax laws. If you were to put up all of our tax laws together, it'd be a book that thick. And you could actually probably make a good few encyclopedias out of stacking up all the different tax laws. You will pay this amount of tax, but if you come under this caveat, you won't pay that, you'll add an extra rate, but if you turn to page 122, you'll see that that caveat only applies to people who were born after 1920. Until then, you have to go to page 500. It's so complicated, so complex. And it is deliberately complex. An example that was given to me was when Estonia achieved independence. What they did was they put together their tax laws, and it made up about 4 pages. Because it basically said, here's what you pay if this is what you earn, don't fiddle your money. But compare that to the UK, mother of all parliaments, where it is deliberately as complicated as possible, because I tell you what, when it's that complicated, it's easier to get away with fiddling it. Simple as that. And we know that that's the entire financial culture on which the UK, and London in particular, is built on. So So point 1 would be, if we were independent, we'd be able to change that kind of thing. This is the sort of things where opportunities open up in ways that we haven't even thought of yet. But the second point is that that's why they won't tell us how much we pay in. They want to make these figures as diluted and as weak as possible. So, like that, we had the Gers figures coming out. It's Gersmas in my house, I call it. I love Gersmas because the world goes into meltdown on Twitter. It's great. Now, the Gers report, and this is always held up as the beacon of, if you look at this is the state of Scotland's finances. If you actually read the Gers report, it tells you that the vast majority of decisions, economic decisions, are still in the hands of Westminster. So the only thing that Gers actually tells you is how Scotland's doing under Westminster rule. Trying to get a figure of how much Scotland is worth is deliberately impossible. Now, I don't know how much easier you can make it. You can only lead a horse to water, but I like to think common sense will kick in with people and they'll go, why won't they tell us what we're worth? Because the answer to that is exactly what I started with. Why do they want to keep us? If we need them, why do they want to keep us? The Tories won't even let you have a spare bedroom. What makes you think they're going to fund their entire country? So a lot of the time, people are looking for arguments that are actually right in front of their face already. You know, quite often I think Yes supporters in particular, because we're so switched on, are sometimes guilty of not seeing the wood for the trees. And that's where we have to bring politics back down to the normal level and go, you can understand this. This isn't something for all the people over there. It isn't something for politicians with a degree. It isn't something for people who are born into a political family. It's you and it's your life. And your life can be made better. Because once we're in control of things, we get to build it and mould it around you and around this vision of what we want our country to be. And the thing is, it's not even that scary. Because if we're always taught to look over to America and Australia, and we know that China's kicking about doing something, that's pretty much as in-depth as my education certainly ever was in international politics. All we need to do is look north a wee bit. There are so many countries that are much more similar to Scotland, that are smaller than Scotland, that are absolutely thriving and leading the way. And the reason you don't hear about them is because they're not causing any problems. That's the country I want to live in.
Okay, that brings the evening to an end, everyone. Thank you once more for coming along to hear Mhairi and Ian. Thank you to Broughton St Mary's Kirk for allowing us to hold this here, and to everyone who helped us out with that. I hope you've enjoyed today. I hope it's really helped answer some of the questions you've had about what we have to say about independence and Scotland. And our times down in Westminster. I am, actually, I didn't mention this, but I'm SNP Westminster Group convener, so welcome to my world in trying to control our two speakers. But they were fantastic. So please put your hands together for the two of them. They will be hanging about for a few minutes, so if you want to have a wee chat, do come up and say hello. But please remember, we do have to be out of here at 9:30. So, okay, thanks very much again, everyone. Thank you.